The hard facts from the CNN News 18 Federal Bank Primetime Studios. Viewers, the champions of Atmanirbhar Bharat, the tribe of conservatives and the malcontents of globalization are having a told you so moment. The Microsoft outage has given all of them a chance to have a right royal moan about the liberal world order, the international post-World War II system characterized, at least in one context, by the encouragement of global trade, economic interdependence, and multilateral agreements. And why not? Look at the mayhem caused by a single rogue file called C-0000291#.sys. This single bit of code in a single content update literally fried the dendrites of the Microsoft's operating system that literally turned blue, the pallor of death. This is what we know. The update to cybersecurity firm Crowdstrike software caused the outage. Crowdstrike CEO confirms, quote, defective update, unquote, hit all Windows hosts. The outage disrupted airlines, banks, and other businesses worldwide. Crowdstrike CEO confirms, quote, no cyber attack or security breach, unquote. Crowdstrike says, quote, a fix for defective update has been deployed, unquote. Microsoft, on its part, viewers, has come out and said the global systems are normalizing as root cause of the outage has been fixed. But till the last we checked, there were still several systems that were coming to terms with this disruption. The descent into coma triggered global mayhem. No country except autarkies like China, Russia, and North Korea was spared. And because India is a paid-up member of the globalized rules-based world order, it was strongly buffeted. 56 flights cancelled and over 160 plus flights delayed. There was absolute frustrated mayhem at the airports. Breakdown of e-checking and boarding systems, carriers and airports shift to manual check-ins. Some people were having a problem retraining their staff to do manual check-in. Handwritten boarding passes were given to passengers. Disruptions were reported in accessing banking apps. Disruptions hit Office apps, Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams, and Azure. Disruptions reported in accessing Instagram, Amazon, Gmail, and there were several others, viewers, which we are still assessing. That a single misplaced bit of computer code could bring whole nations to their knees reveals just how fragile the world is. It should have been clear enough to everyone 3 years ago when a single sneeze triggered a global pandemic. That's still the globe. But some lessons are hard learned. Once bitten isn't always twice shy. This disruption was because of a malfunction. What if the next cyber pandemic is because of malevolence? Sabotage? This question needs to be pondered by those who mocked Prime Minister Modi for reading the signals right after COVID struck. They laughed at him for unveiling his vision for an Atmanirbhar Bharat, an India that wasn't hermetic, but self-reliant enough to wither global catastrophes. Let me take you through the cast of those big leaders, those tall leaders that had a stab at Narendra Modi when he talked about Atmanirbharta and the importance of Atmanirbharta in a world where globalization has not always produced the results that we were hoping. In fact, globalization has led or accentuated the impact of catastrophes. Mallikarjun Kharge, September 16, 2023 said, such slogans are merely hollow words meant to distract nation from government failures. Rahul Gandhi, who could be the next Prime Minister, February 9, 2022 said, Statue of Equality is made in China. New India is China Nirbhar. Akhilesh Yadav, January 2, 2021. We cannot get vaccinated by the BJP's vaccine. Kapil Sibal, June 2020. This is another jumla. That is the only thing we make in India, and we are masters at that under this government. Globalization has brought many benefits, but it has also had its misses. Let me take you through some hard facts, viewers. Thailand joined the RCEP, but in last 18 months, its GDP growth has slumped to 2.7% because China dumped goods. And when I argued, and people like me in government argued, viewers, against India joining the RCEP, we were called protectionists, anti-globalists, hyper-nationalists. Another hard fact, Mexico joined NAFTA and has had a negative impact as it has faced trade deficits and uneven competition with the US. India's independent trade agreements with countries like US, EU and ASEAN have enabled it to negotiate better trade terms and increase its exports. Had they been part of these larger conglomerates, these larger trading alliances, it may not have ended that way, viewers. We wouldn't be where we are today at 7 point whatever it is percent of GDP. Hard fact, another one, by being independent enough to impose tariffs and other trade barriers, India has managed to protect its agricultural and industrial sector. Another hard fact, US presidential frontrunner Donald Trump, who could well be the president of the United States, has proposed a flat 10% tariff hike to protect and nurture domestic manufacturing, and he's also saying that he is not going to become one of those global cops who is going to give and give and give to NATO. In fact, the time has come for European countries, if they want to be part of some big alliance that has the American imprint, to pay for their security. Here's another hard fact, viewers. India's over-dependence on Chinese imports when it came to masks, anti-contamination kits, testing kits, APIs, makes it vulnerable to supply chain disruptions such as those caused by COVID-19 pandemic. You remember, when COVID-19 happened, we didn't even have 100 masks to our name. Big question. What will all those who wanted India to join RCEP and other multilateral trading blocs say now on the back of these hard facts? Will they continue to mock Modi for having proposed Atmanirbharta or come up with the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat? Let's open this up. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, former Minister of State Information Technology, is with us. So is Anand Ranganathan, Tehseen Poonawala. We also have political analyst Jiten Jain, cybersecurity expert. Of course, we'll talk to you not about the political implications of this, so don't look worried. I can see the color draining from your face. Don't look worried. I'm not going to suck you into the larger debate. I'm just going to ask you a couple of things, Jiten Jain. And let me begin with you, since you're the expert about how this meltdown actually happened and how can we insulate ourselves from it.
Look, Anand, Microsoft as an operating system company.
The Anand is sitting on the top right of your screens.
Yeah.
And
sorry, I'm unable to see that video.
Yeah.
So, Microsoft as an operating system company uses multiple third-party service providers. Crowdstrike, which is a threat intelligence and cybersecurity company, happens to be one of them. Now, Crowdstrike issued an update in their sensor called Falcon, which is a threat intelligence feed. And whoever a Microsoft user or a company or enterprise was using that Falcon sensor with Microsoft, the moment they received that update, their systems crashed. Now, it is essentially because these operating systems have an inbuilt feature, inherent feature. Whenever you install a new hardware in a computer which is not working properly, or you put a code which is malicious, or you by mistake install some app which is not working properly, which may lead to the operating system crash. Windows has an inherent feature of running a stop code, and they show a blue screen, which is a screen of death. That system gets freeze, you can't do anything. The only thing you can do is try and reboot the system, or you can try and reboot the system in safe mode with very limited connectivity features. Now, in this case, whichever users, and the first ones were in Australia because it is the updates come as per the time zones. So Australians received the first thing, then it came to Asia, and then it went to Europe. Whichever Microsoft users or enterprise which are using Microsoft operating systems and Crowd, the moment they received that update of CrowdStrike, a file got installed in their system and the system crashed. And the worst was when they tried to reboot the system, it was still showing this blue screen. There was no way out. Now, we must remember that CrowdStrike is no doubt they are a very reputed company, but whenever you install push a new update, you test it at multiple levels, multiple times in beta mode, then you test in a control environment. And Microsoft also, they have very strong third-party policies. They also, test several times in-house before pushing an update at that. And Microsoft is not a small company. You're looking at billions of computers, and that too enterprise one across the world. So we have really no idea how did this push through. And then look at the outages. I mean, if you just assume that Delhi airport systems are not working for 4 hours, no. To normalize the things, it might take 4 weeks. And then the hospitals, then the stock markets. You look, now they have to do all the operations manually. The stock markets, the trades which didn't work, the companies will not say that, okay, we will roll back all the, things which happened in the market. Some things are irreversible. So hospitals suffered, patients are not being able to get admitted. So I think Microsoft cannot, do away from the fact by saying that the third party operator has owed up the mistake. We are not responsible. I think everybody is equally responsible. Third, we as a society are also equally responsible. In this mad rush to install all AI-based systems and automate everything, we must now realize that every company has a disaster recovery plan, an emergency plan, or a standard SOP. How will the functions work if something goes wrong? But it's a learning lesson for all of us, probably a lifetime lesson which comes in decades and evolution of any technology. We must learn how to go back to manual systems in case of an emergency. It has happened in Delhi airports in the past also because of disconnectivity, because of the malicious code. In Ukraine, it has happened because of war and airstrikes. But we must learn our lessons from Ukraine war. We must learn from lessons what has happened today, that in case of over dependency on a foreign enterprise, foreign operators, or vendors which are not beyond your control, you must always have an emergency mechanism to switch back to manual mode, especially on hospitals and telecom companies and airport operations. They may be slow, they may be 20% of the capacity, but things should never come to a standstill. And these European airlines which are facing worse, it is because they even stopped boarding pass check-ins. They just put up some machines and they said, come and scan your boarding pass, put your luggage will go to the tarmac and you fly and get your luggage back. There was no manual operators available there. And that is why they had to ground the airlines. Whole operations were shut. In India, at least we still have mix of human interventions on operators. And that is why we were less impacted by all this. And last question I want to ask, see, when something has gone wrong in the system, there were many people, including CrowdStrike, which has offered some off solutions that delete this file, you might be able to restore some solutions. These stopgap arrangements are good for private people like us or small private companies, but for bigger enterprises, banks, stock exchanges, you can't touch a file without a proper, you don't even have admin rights. Yes. So entire IT team has to follow an SOP, take an approval from Microsoft before doing such a thing, and you don't know what the dependencies are, what else might get impacted. So by just giving a quick fix solution, you can't just fix it in 5 minutes. There are a lot of SOPs involved. And that is why telecom companies, which have a stronger SOPs that, even if Microsoft rolls in an update, they don't allow that update to go into their systems unless they have tested them on their own systems in a test control environment. That is why every enterprise which are not allowed Microsoft updates to just randomly go through in their gateways were saved, and everyone who allowed are suffering. And that brings us to a fundamental question, that because it is a global meltdown, Microsoft and CrowdStrike's response was very quick. But if this update had impacted only Indian systems, I can tell you it would have been 48 hours before they wake up and issue some sort of resolution. So we must remember, because we were a part of a global meltdown, we also got an instant fix. But if we were the only one, we would have been treated like a third world resource, and they would have been sleeping for a week, and over the weekend and Monday they would have picked up our call and said that, okay, fine, we'll do something. Right. So I think it's a learning lesson for all of us that over dependency on foreign vendors or even private vendors beyond our control, and that to a dependency which is, it's incomprehensible. I think 90%
absolutely.
of our
I think you're absolutely right. It's
Microsoft.
Complete. And this was on the back, Dr. Ranganathan, of a malfunction. What if it was malevolence? What would have happened?
You never know. You never know that in that update, probably somebody played a mischief. You never know.
Yes, well, you never know, Mr. Jain. Unfortunately, यहाँ पर जैसे आत्मनिर्भरता की बात होती है और मोदी जी करते हैं, तो फिर उनको, he's treated with great contempt. But anyhow, let's open this up because Dr. Ranganathan and of course ex-MOS also with us, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Tehseen Poonawalla also is with us, and of course we will have a bit of a political argy-bargy also on the side. But Dr. Ranganathan, before we get into that, what's your take tonight?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists, two of whom are real experts. So Rajiv and Mr. Jain. So my talking about technology is like taking coal to Dhanbad. Be that as it may, I want to give a common man's perspective, which is, isn't what this is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? The world is a family. So instead of being alarmist and junking integration into the world, I actually see this as a serious issue faced by the family. The family will come together and solve it. It already has. And the family will get together and make sure such a thing doesn't happen frequently. Many people are now predictably, understandably, I would say, talking about us adopting a local alternative to Microsoft or such technology. But the thing is, anything that is connected to the internet or cyberspace, whether local or global software, is hackable. That's why EVMs are safe, because they are not connected to cyberspace. Any local alternative to software would therefore still be prone to hacking. We just have to accept this and work as a world family to solve this. The other reason, of course, is that in technology, two things are vital: competition and cutting edge. If local software is not cutting edge, Indian companies using it will not be able to compete with the world companies and will fall by the wayside. Do we want that? Instead, we should have a choice to choose the best software or technology or product there is. To give you just one example, the Prime Minister's car is an armored BMW. Why not a Mahindra? Because we as yet don't make an armored car as good as what is needed to protect our Prime Minister best. We will in the future, of course we will. But till such time we have to use the best there is to protect the Prime Minister makes complete sense. If I may, just a minute, I'd like to expound a little on this local versus global, Rahul. Spine always grows in the back, that is against the wall. Today, we may feel our spine is against the wall, back is against the wall. We as a nation have done brilliantly over the last 75 years. Of course, we have. We have developed world-beating technologies that the entire world is currently using. But we don't have the world's best technology in all sectors. So in my view, an emotional nudge is fine. In fact, it should be encouraged as long as one doesn't adopt protectionism. There has to be a balance between local and global, and that local cannot apply to all sectors of our economy. The easiest sectors to go local as well as reform are agriculture and tourism. But there are sectors where we cannot afford to go local, like technology, pharma, defense all the time. We spend only 0.7% of our GDP on science and technology, lowest amongst all BRICS nations. We haven't produced a single biggest blockbuster drug in decades. When life is at risk, we cannot choose a local drug over a foreign one if the latter works much better. When security is at risk, we cannot choose Tejas over Rafale, for this isn't being local. This is being suicidal. So yes, nudge us to go local. Uncle Chips over Pringles, Amul over Haagen-Dazs, Ajanta Ellora over Big Ben, Shilajit over Viagra. This is acceptable. But don't nudge us so much that we are pushed off the globalization cliff, either on full import or local MNC manufacturing. Gain spine, but not at the cost of losing your head.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with you fundamentally. And till we don't, of course, develop the capacities, we must have a balance. But we'll never develop the capacities till, as Dr. Ranganathan also says, we don't try to grow a spine when we have our backs to the wall. So we can't also have the other side saying, no, this is just complete balderdash. This business of Atmanirbharta and all of this. And today, I think the chickens are coming home to roost. Tomorrow, it could be and Mr. Jain has already sort of suggested it could be tomorrow malevolence. It could be actually a cyber pandemic. And then we are left with nothing. So start building redundancies now. Start thinking about it. And don't mock anyone's thought or appreciation of that idea. Let me bring in Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar. Let's get a very informed perspective. Tehseen is also here with us. He's raising his finger. Mr. Chandrasekhar, how do you view the havoc caused by the outage in the context of an interconnected world?
This is unprecedented, Rahul. I mean, I've been around the block a few times in technology. I've spent 3.5 decades in this space. And I have certainly seen many system crashes and meltdowns, including on my watch as a minister. But I have never seen something so deep, so widespread as this Microsoft 365 meltdown. And it is certainly should worry all of us, because at the end of the day, it seems to me that the culprit was neither the underlying physical internet, nor was it the data center, nor was it the cloud, nor was it the application itself. It turns out that it was a cybersecurity agent, a small piece of software in a very complex architecture that broke and was incompatible. And essentially, you've seen laid low businesses, large and small, and put at risk and disruption hundreds and thousands and lakhs of consumers and customers of banks and airlines and other enterprises. So fairly shattering experience to just watch this play out. It is fairly unprecedented.
Is there therefore
know the history of technology? I've never seen something like this.
Is there therefore a need to build redundancies that make us less dependent? For example, the COVID pandemic taught us the importance of Atmanirbharta as supply chains were so stretched and in some cases just completely snapped.
Yeah, so a number of questions do come out of this experience, and these are questions not unique to India, or it's a question that businesses and enterprises and governments are asking all over the world. Of course, the one question that is the intuitive question for everybody to ask is this over dependence on these few platforms around the world, big tech as we refer to them. Is that healthy? Is that sustainable? Is there a need for more competition and more choice? So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect is that as we digitize and accelerate our digitization even more, these systems are becoming more complex, and there are multiple layers to the systems that we do not see. We see a ubiquitous application, or you see a ubiquitous internet, but essentially these are sitting on multiple layers that are all independently being built, whether it's a data center, whether it's the physical internet, whether it's the cloud, whether it's the actual application. And then in between all of these, we have these small players like this Falcon Crowdstrike cybersecurity agent that is an endpoint cybersecurity solution. And any of these things could give for the entire system to be disrupted. So we are playing in a very, very complex playground with multiple moving parts.
So let me ask you.
It seems to me at the end of the day, there has to be some accountability at some level. Whether it is the
accountability, yes, of course, but that's a question we'll come to a little later. I just want to get to the nub of this. Many mock the Prime Minister, emphasis on Atmanirbharta. Is this a wake-up call for all those people? Is this a reality check for all of them? I mean, there were so many of them from the Congress party. There was Mr. Kharge, Rahul Gandhi. There were several of these people.
Yeah, look, they've been wrong on so many things before. I don't think they're particularly uniquely wrong on this particular issue, whether it is on UPI and digital payments. I mean, there's a whole chapter and verse that I can lay out on how they've read India wrong, how they've read Indian capabilities wrong, and how they've read the power of Indian innovation and young Indians to do what the rest of the world is doing wrong. So look, I agree with you completely. In a lot of ways, this over dependence on big tech, American big tech, is something that is not sustainable. In my opinion, this is not just relevant to India, it's relevant to the rest of the world, that this over dependence on US big tech is something that is unhealthy. There is a concentration of risk, there's a concentration of power and commercial value that is getting built into these big tech platforms. And Prime Minister has openly encouraged investments and growth of Indian innovation. And frankly, there is a company today called Zoho, which is designed in India, built in India by a remarkable patriot, Sridhar Vembu, who's headquartered this in Tenkasi, Tamil Nadu, and has got a very comparable set of enterprise applications that Microsoft today has. So, and the government of India has increasingly used Zoho for its own use as well. So I think we are getting there. This may, in a sense, accelerate.
Accelerate that process. I actually buy that argument completely. Tehseen Poonawalla, why then does the Congress party have this sort of, look, I'm not only singling the Congress party out, there were several other leaders also. Every time India has sort of tried to make itself less dependent by forging ahead with something or the other, we find that the opposition reflexively calls it a jumla. Is that sort of the right approach? And especially now, sort of an interconnected world like this, where a ripple here can actually trigger a tsunami somewhere else?
Good evening, Rahul. Thank you for having me on the show. I think you are signaling out the opposition. I think that's unfair of you, and allow me to put my points why. Opposition will legitimately ask questions. No one in opposition, and I was actually checking when you raised these points, nobody in opposition actually spoke about or blamed the government for what happened today. Nobody did. Obviously, if it's a global outage, it's got something to do with a security cyber company that's failed. Nobody's going to blame the Prime Minister for it. But on other issues, please understand India is the leader in Web 2.0. Web 2.0 under the Congress, and the BJP, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, came to Parliament on a bullock cart. Now, let me make some substantive points because you've gone all around the place. This was not about pharmaceutical, but in pharmaceutical, you spoke about COVID. My friend Adar's vaccine was not made by Serum. Serum manufactured it. It was an Astra vaccine, an Oxford vaccine. What happened to the Indian vaccines, including the one where the Honorable Prime Minister went? The Hyderabad vaccine was not recognized by WHO. You can say whatever conspiracy. None of the other vaccines came, and Adar actually saved us. It wasn't really an Indian vaccine, though manufactured in India. And I give Adar credit for it. I think Adar should have got more. Now let's come to and what did the government do? They threw Adar under the bus. They said you can sue them in court. That's what the government of India do. But let's come to the technological issue. Do you know on 15th March 2023, Microsoft Cloud had an outage? Did we learn from that? Do you know the AIMS was attacked, was a cyber attack on AIMS? It was one of the worst cyber attacks in our country, and the government was absolutely clueless for 3 days. They only started reacting after 3 days. Let me ask you, since you spoke about COVID, where is the Setu data? The Arogya Setu so-called bodyguard data. Do you have any clue where is it? The data protection laws are still not in place. We don't even, as so far as, and I agree with the Honorable ex-minister, we have some of the best AI companies in India, some of the good companies that are coming up. But for every success story, most AI fintechs are today registering in Dubai. They aren't registering in India because you're not clear on laws. You're not clear on data protection. You're not clear on open source coding. You're not clear on public open source coding. Unless we don't build and encourage building of it on an open source democratic manner,
when Bharat Biotech,
we will not move forward.
Okay, since you are talking, since you brought up this issue of vaccines, I was just generally talking about. I was talking about Atmanirbharta. Okay, I wasn't talking about any one particular sector, this, that, the other. I was talking about the general concept, Atmanirbhar Bharat, which was woefully rubbished, and I never implied that today the opposition has attacked Modi for what happened. I never even meant that. I never even said that. I'm just saying that there is a general reluctance to embrace. For example, the RCEP controversy, and I think Dr. Ranganathan might have been on that debate, and I did it when I was the editor-in-chief of another channel. I even wrote a piece for the Times of India, where I argued against us entering the RCEP. And we were accused, all those people who argued against that point, including, of course, spokespersons of the government, including in the Ministry of External Affairs, they were all called ultra-nationalists, as regressive protectionists. In fact, this government has undertaken no protectionist programs. All and most protectionist programs that have ever been undertaken have been undertaken under the Congress, let's be very honest, or other left-leaning governments. So I just want to make that clear.
I don't think that's true.
Tariffs.
Let me give you an example.
No, one second. Tariffs.
Let me give you a practical example just now, since you're talking about technology.
Sir.
This government one day, just sir, give me 30 seconds. It's not true. Give me 10 seconds. This government one day got up decided that they will suddenly ban the import of laptops into India. Suddenly they realized it's not practical 2 days later.
Suddenly they realized, right, because they were open to criticism. They tried something and it failed. No, hang on. Every CEO tries something and it fails. But someone didn't get up one day and nationalize the entire banking system, pretty much all companies, and told everybody who was a multinational to leave and create a jobs crisis and then decide also to impose such huge taxes. Okay, one second. Let's be reasonable. Tessin, we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Certain things were done which weren't in the interests of this country. We have to accept it. Luckily, Dr. Manmohan Singh at least had the sense. And, and of course, the Prime Minister at that time, Narasimha Rao, not a Gandhi family Prime Minister, but someone from outside of that system, had the sense to realize that we were in the boonies, quite frankly. But Dr. Ranganathan, very quickly on this issue, because, we can keep banding words and pulling out one or two examples. The general thrust must be on building redundancies in every sector. I think that's inarguable.
Absolutely no doubt about it. And I'm the first votary for Atmanirbhar, but I've said this. We have to be the world's best. If we have
so then let me ask you, Dr. Ranganathan,
yes.
Let me ask you that then. Because you see, India's agricultural sector is still the largest contributing to the GDP. Now, a few years ago, 40%, jobs contributed towards labor and jobs. Okay. So a few years ago, a decision was taken to double, for example, farm incomes, to make us less dependent, hopefully, on imports of, let's say, pulses, this, that, the other, diversify the crop basket, let's grow other stuff, so that we could even export and turn into net exporters. What happens? A bunch of farmers, propped up by the opposition, jump in and say, no, this won't even fly.
Yes.
Now, what is protectionism then?
No,
Isn't that protectionism to the nth power?
Don't rub salt on my wounds. It was the greatest decisions in independent India's history, the reforms, and it was the greatest back down.
Yeah.
At what I've called as an anti-national step, the repeal of those farm laws. And of course, the opposition is squarely to be blamed for it, including the Supreme Court as well. They went back on their U-turn on their promises manifestos. But I want to say a couple of things. You asked a very pertinent question. No one should be against Atmanirbharta, especially in sectors that are crucial to our well-being. For example, the defense sector. But I gave you an example. We are still dependent upon foreign technology. For example, for Rafales, we're still buying things. Why? Because we want the best protection for ourselves. But in cases where alternative was there, I'm afraid the government was found wanting. Let me give you just two examples. The first example is in the case of COVID. Did you know 2 billion doses of vaccines were administered? 1.8 billion of those were actually a vaccine that was made in Oxford.
Yeah.
Only 200 million doses were of Atmanirbhar vaccine. We did not encourage enough because we did not culture the virus in time. We were even 3 months later than America, and we call ourselves the world vaccine hub. The second example is the latest one called Coup. This was an alternative to Twitter. Now that is a company that has declared bankruptcy. I want to ask a simple thing. If we want to encourage Atmanirbharta, why was the Prime Minister not on Coup instead of Twitter? That would have given a tremendous signal, and people would have encouraged Coup.
Dr. Ranganathan, look, the government has been in power for 10 years. It's done quite a bit already. A lot of things have happened. Today we're, at 7.1 or 7.2% of GDP, and we're expected to hold that rate when other global economies are going to slow once again. Had perhaps Modi had another 10 years in office, maybe we could have had a more informed, discussion. Yes, there have been misses, but look, an attempt is being made. I mean, imagine if we had been able to double farm incomes. Where would we have been? Today, the GDP would have grown by 4 or 5 more % viewers. And the Congress promised those same steps. And then they say, don't focus on the Congress party and the opposition. What is one to do?
May I ask you a question?
No, sir, you can blame and blame and blame.
May I ask you? No.
Of course.
I'm saying,
sir, there's a lot to be done.
conflict.
Rahul,
But it has to be an enabling environment. Yes,
But
Mr.
Rahul,
Jain.
But Rahul,
Yes.
no, just sorry.
Look,
Mr. Jain, just
Rahul,
take it.
Yes, Mr. Jain.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that Indian opposition has become, it has become their habit to
There you
ridicule that first step.
And here
Let
I
me
was
tell you this
thinking
whole
that you were
story of
shrinking
Atmanirbhar
away
Bharat.
from saying a political statement. मैंने तो आपसे open करना था
No,
actually.
no.
Made the
I
big
mean,
mistake.
सच बोलना चाहिए ना. Such कड़वा होता है, and I'll tell you what, when government decided to invest heavily into UPI and RuPay card, when they asked private sector banks to start issuing RuPay cards, many people called it arm twisting, protectionism. But I think government was trying to protect Indian society from the monopoly of Visa and MasterCard, from those two foreign vendors which are minting money 2.5% on every transaction. Now today, that small step towards UPI and RuPay card has become a global success story.
ISRO, this great thing
now-
that Mr. Nehru
Now,
founded.
Rahul,
How much
Rahul,
money was committed
Rahul,
to ISRO?
I want to tell you a very
Jain.
important thing which is so critical to our national security.
Okay.
See, what has happened today is maybe a human error or maybe something which happened which was beyond human control. But imagine somebody, if tomorrow they want to do it deliberately.
That's what I'm
I'll tell
saying.
you a scenario. Swift, which was sold as a global common, a global family asset of every country. When it came to war, all Western countries got together and kicked out Russia.
That's right.
So all this whole sharaba of global common and being on a global asset and the common asset of everyone was all thrown into a dustbin. A technology was weaponized to win a war. Tomorrow, God forbid, if India goes to an alliance which is not in the right on the American side, tomorrow if US decides to use Microsoft to weaponize the war, I mean today Australia received this whole update first because there was a time zone issue. By using several indicators like time zone, you can push an update to a particular
I completely
geography.
agree with you.
Microsoft.
That's the
not
greater
about
worry.
Microsoft. But tomorrow, any foreign country can weaponize anything which you are over dependent
and the
upon.
Chinese have announced that they can do it.
And Rahul, I want to ask everybody a question. We all buy this Microsoft laptops for our home with Windows. From last 2 3 years, they have made it mandatory to create this online cloud Microsoft 365 account. Even when you're setting up a new laptop, you merely want to log in. You just can't have an offline user like old days. You have to make a Microsoft online cloud account.
Mr. Jain, become a Luddite like me. Buy a grade 1 kind of phone and run with it. वही मैंने किया है.
No, but nobody's raising a voice because Western countries have decided to get together because that is
It's
data
a very
collection.
good point.
We
Look,
do
viewers,
not have a data privacy.
I need to move on. This is obviously aroused a lot of passions. I didn't intend to get people so lathered up about this issue, but it is a very, very, very important issue.